So welcome back to another episode of A Stay in CX, and today I'm with David Linley, the CEO of By Design. If you're an agent looking to understand how you get into the premium market, how to harness technology on a collaborative way, and ultimately how to operate in a different way of working, then this is an episode for you. I hope you enjoy it. So David, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So obviously it's the same studio as what you tend to do with your podcast as well. So it's not like you know anything different in this room today.
I know they're sick of the sight of me. This is the fourth one we've done this week at this rate. I'm sleeping here.
So thanks for joining us. For anyone who doesn't know who David Linley is, I mean, there's a few, you're very well connected. You've got your own podcast, you know, CEO of a massive network of agents out there. So like, I wouldn't say that you were unknown in the industry. So who is David Linley?
That's kind of you to say, yeah.
Rather than what does David Linley do?
Yeah, good question. Okay. So, for anyone who's not met me, hello, nice to meet you. So my name is David Linley. I've always been involved in agency, always as a supplier to agency. And kind of my background has been through working in what was a family business, which started as the Guild of Professional Estate Agents, then became Guild of Property Professionals. And then that spawned Fine & Country Network as well, which is where I ended up working for a long time. I left there in 2020. It's just for a number of different reasons was the right thing to do, from things that are happening in the company, things that are happening in the world. There's a lot happening in the world in 2020. There's a lot happening for me personally in 2020 as well. And it was just the right time to move on. And kind of, I suppose, where our paths crossed was when a while after leaving, I got a DM from Mark. Mark slid into my DMs and he said that he wanted to have a conversation about the premium market. He knew that I'd left and didn't know what I was doing. And I said, yeah, great, let's have a coffee. And we met in Birch. But we met shortly afterwards as well. We were discussing the opportunity that the premium market had. And there's probably a bit to say within that, but fast forward it to the end of my long-winded introduction, came to start By Design, co-founded with Mark representing Iceberg and with Matt Giggs from the Giggs Group. And we're on our way, we're on our journey.
God, that's a lot to unravel then.
Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. So like, when did you actually officially say start in agency, supplier-wise? Like, you know, you said your dad Malcolm was set up and it was a family-run business and that part. So like, when did you get involved within that? Was you sort of dragged into it, or was you get inspired by what you saw and thought, I'll just jump into it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I've always been one way or another involved with the business. I literally grew up with it. It was in our house for longer than it wasn't in our house. And you just kind of by like osmosis, you just absorb so much information. And like the sad thing is that, you know, that quiz show Mastermind?
Yeah.
And they say, oh, what's your specialist subject? People are like, oh, the Olympic Games.
Estate agency.
It might be independent estate agents in England and Wales. It doesn't get much more sad than that, does it? But that's just come from just being around it for so long. And in fairness, I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the people. I really enjoy the industry. I've made so many connections with so many friends in it as well. But yeah, all the way through growing up, I spent so many weekends at the office. When it moved out of the house, when it was in the house, there's no choice but being around the office. And then did university, started at the bottom rung. I remember we were selling websites to guild members for like 49 quid a month. I remember that was the job at the time. Actually, before then, we were selling training packages on DVDs.
that must be like a really interesting evolution, like you said, going from like being in the house to where, you know, it's surpassed obviously it being a family-run business to where it is now, and it's on like a global scale, effectively on so many different levels. It's like almost like that acorn to like the oak tree, effectively.
Yeah, it's long gone now. Nothing to do with us anymore.
Exactly,
all private equity owned. But yeah, it was interesting to be part of it in that journey as well.
As you've got almost growing up with it, it's like it's sort of like, I don't know, probably another child in the family, isn't it?
It literally felt like it. I've got two other brothers. It was a fourth brother. Yeah. It's a funny feeling.
And so you went off to university. Any connection, or was it just literally I just wanted to break away from that?
No, I went to university, did business management, always been interested in business, and then came back and started in the family business and was working. Yeah, like I say, just selling basic stuff at the bottom, really. Right from there.
From there, how long was it the transition that you went into then the Fine & Country?
Yeah, so I was
like from supplier to effective agency.
I mean, it was always that business is always a supply. It's never actually sold any houses itself, because it works on a like a franchise license basis, a similar sort of thing. And that's always been my role in it, is and my connection to the industry has always been on the supplier side, be it through marketing or prop tech or branding and marketing and everything that comes with it. But it always been that. And I suppose your question is about Fine & Country becoming an agency brand name, and where that started from as well. And that was just an evolution of where there was that gap in the market. And still, that is for me where the most lucrative part of the estate agency industry is, and like often the most overlooked. And I suppose this is my big thing, that I think quite often, and arguably quite rightly, that premium end of the market gets tarred with the brush of being carried away with itself and swanky videos and okay, whatever. But actually, I'm a bit of a data geek at heart, and if you look into the numbers of it, it is incredibly lucrative. Like, that is where the action's at. And if you'll go with me for a second. So I remember when we first met, when we were at Birch, and I kind of showed you, pulled the pants off you with a spreadsheet. I've kind of taken that a step further. But essentially, if you look at the market, what tends to happen is that estate agents look, even if they're not doing this scientifically, but they'll look and they'll feel and they'll know where the most transactions happen. And that is, of course, around the average house price mark, your £250,000 to £300,000. That is where the most transactions happen. So you go, okay, well, if I'm going to set up an agency, I may as well be where the action is and set up for that average house price market. The problem is when you start to do a couple of things. Firstly, you overlay fees over that. And even if you just took an average fee of, just to keep the maths easy, 1%, you quickly see where the sweet spot isn't, and it isn't in that residential marketplace. It quickly moves up market. But then if you put reality on top of that, which is where you introduce average fee levels in the market on top of average prices, then you see exponentially how that premium market is so much more lucrative than the resi market. And I kind of stole a bit of research from Simon Ledbetter, who runs Unchained Marketing, and he did this big survey of 553 estate agents, I think it was, and measured loads of different things, their prop tech adoption, I think even the way they were voting, but what they do from their marketing, how they run their business, team sizes, everything. And one of them was fees and price brackets. And you start to see exponentially how that premium market is so much more lucrative than the resi market, to a point where, to really pin the tail on the donkey, if you create, the pound note value of every single sector of the market, 0 to £50,000 properties, all the way up to £5 million plus, you see that properties over £500,000 in value, they are the ones. So that's only, from memory, I think it's 27% of all of the properties that are sold in that price range. That's 51% of all of the fees. I could be wrong, it's either 18 or 27%, but that's over half of all the estate agency fees just come from properties over £500,000 in value plus. And that's often treated as like the niche market, that it's not the mainstream market, but actually it is the mainstream. It's over half the fees are happening in that marketplace. And then last thing before I get off my soapbox and shut up is this, so that's where the action is. But if you ask any estate agent, so you work with estate agents up and down the country, if you ask any of them in any average town around the UK, where is the most competition? Where are the most agents focused? They focus on the premium market or the residential market? 9 times out of 100, they're going to tell you there's more competition in that resi market. Where's the biggest pressure on fees? Is it in the premium end or is it in the residential market? But as we sit here today, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where Purple Bricks came out and said that they're now like 100% free. So there's increasing pressure on fees there. And then to make a state agency sustainable and profitable, even with those margins being squeezed like that, you have to go for the volume game. With volume game becomes more staff, and then you get wage inflation, and you get costs going up, like Rightmove going up, or On the Market will soon become a bill. All those things start to escalate into a bit of a vicious cycle. And that's why my mission, I suppose, is to encourage agents to move up market, or even if they don't move the business up market, is to have a strategy for that premium market, so that they have that share of the pie where the action really is in that premium upper quartile marketplace. I'll be quiet now, Rob.
No. It's interesting, because we briefly just touched on it, but even before getting on camera, I speak to a lot of clients who say, I want to be a 1.5% agent. And then all of a sudden, but then I come back to them and say to them, like, okay, what's the strategy.
When you say I want to be 1.5% agent, you mean that's what their average fee? They want their average fees to be that?
Yeah. So they go, I'm 1% or 1.25, and I'll be 1.5%. But like, what's very interesting about that particular thing is like you could be a 1.5% on 100 grand houses and still make no living. So what I liked about what you said about that was more the fact of like, it's the end goal. Like, what is the bank's money in my bank account at the end of that transaction? It's not the percentages of the fees. It's like, how much am I worth in pound notes? Because it could be a variance on 1.5 at 100 grand to a variance on £1 million. Like, your fees are different. But you could still go, the bragging rights could be, I'm a 1.5% agent. It's like, yeah, great, but you're selling caravans. You know what I mean? Like, it's not going to get you anywhere. And like you said, if you fundamentally believe in that premium market and delivering an actual premium service that people are going to pay that money for, and why they're paying an agent for that, you can't do it on a mass scale. It's just not physically possible. If you're going to say, with a team of 4 of us, we're going to command 2% or 20 grand fees, but we're going to try and do 100 houses a month for whatever it is. It's like, you're never going to deliver that experience to have that almost concierge service that the upper quartile of the market wants. So when with this mission you've gone down it, did you ever see that? What was it like? What was that like when you were working at Fine & Country, without going into like too much of it? Did you see that happening where, because obviously with your Fine & Country brands, you tend to find that you've got people who are traditional agencies, and then they've got the Fine & Country license on the side of it. And I have come across agents in the past where they've almost trying to shoehorn both into one office, and same person answering the phone is like, I'm going to be answering the phone under the two different telephone numbers, but we're still going to offer the same service, but we're going to charge more. Like, really, the fundamental is that someone's parting, say, 20 grand, 30 grand, 50 grand of their money to deliver that service. So what would you say is different in why you set up By Design to maybe the high-end other agents that are out there?
So it's interesting. So it sounds like a bit of a diversion, but it comes back to the point you're making there. So as you said earlier, me and Matt Giggs, who's a co-founder of ours in By Design as well, we have a podcast. It's a much more ridiculous podcast than this. It's called Property Porn Stars, and it's all about the premium market. Anyway, keeping it ridiculous, we did, we're going to release it shortly, the 12 days of Christmas, where we've done, at that point, up to 12 podcasts, and put on our stupid Christmas hats and did like a summary of each of the guests. And one of the things that occurred to me actually while we were doing that, literally while we were recording it, was that over that amount of time and speaking with that many agents across the country, I've seen hundreds of times where agents have gone up market. Like, that's been the strategy. They've achieved that. They've enjoyed the successes of it, which we can talk about. I don't think I've ever seen the opposite happen, where you have an agent who's operating in that premium market, goes, no, I've had enough of this.
Yeah, I've had enough of it.
I want to get back in the volume game.
Yeah.
It never happens. And so you used the word belief earlier. Like, I don't really think that you need belief, because I can show you data, and like, belief is what you would need. You don't need to believe science. The numbers add up. But if you wanted the belief from it, then that's one thing that I could put my hand on my heart and say, I've never seen that happen. And then I suppose coming back to your question, so I'm taking it all the way back again, when you and I met, and we met with Mark as well, one of the questions that Mark asked me at the start is, he said, what would you do different if you wanted to start a premium brand like that today? And the number one thing that I said was that it has to run on one CRM system. That was always the missing piece of the puzzle. And I say that, but it was the holy grail. That is unbelievably powerful. So when we set up By Design, we wanted to give agents the best of all worlds. By that, what I mean is their complete independence. They can offer that personal service, and the seller gets the benefit of working with a local, independent, dedicated, dependent estate agent who knows the area, knows local connections, knows local values. Brilliant. Combine that with national brand marketing, advertising network, and the strength and the scale that gives. And to be honest with you, premium homeowners, they want a bigger picture agency to deal with to sell their home. Generally, it comes with scale. And then underpinning that comes our database of high net worth individuals that sits on Lifecycle. But what's been really interesting is that I thought, yes, okay, we ought to do that. That's the right thing to do. But actually, the power of working on one CRM system collaboratively together is kind of been better than I thought it would be, for a few reasons. One is that we do have that database underneath there that we all work together in and share, and we've got access to more buyers and to more sellers than we would do otherwise. But also it maintains consistency. And I think that's so important in marketing in general, of course, but especially in that premium market. You said earlier about wearing the two hats and where things get muddled up, and I've seen that all the time. I registered with my local F&C office ages ago, and then I'm getting what we call a core brand email out from them, and I understand that. But if you remember the public, that's dreadful. And then on top of that as well, and this is what I wasn't kind of expecting, but this is where Lifecycle comes into its own, is where we spot opportunities that wouldn't otherwise be 100%. There. And so the example I give was that there was a homeowner registered on the system, wanted to view a property with By Design in Norfolk, but they live in Bedford. The agent in Bedford can see that as an opportunity before anyone else in the marketplace can. They can get on the phone. That's someone that they ought to be having a conversation with at that point in time. And that was a sort of unexpected Brucey bonus of working collaboratively in a Lifecycle CRM that wasn't really expected before.
Yeah, because I think obviously when we met, you had that concept of what you wanted to do from it. When you outlaid that back in my brain, how I work, I was thinking, this is going to be fucking awesome. Because I could see it. I've worked with the old CRMs, and even just from not even a network of agents or anything like that, just in an old CRM, from finding landlords, for example, potential landlords from buyers registering into the system.
Yep.
You had to get certain staff to tick a box in sales to then show the opportunity for lettings. So when I'd run the metrics of numbers, I'd be like, there's 3 people potentially registered last month for landlords. There's not 3 people, there was 50 odd people, but because you couldn't be bothered to go onto the next page and tick a box.
Yeah.
Because all you cared about was booking them in for the sale.
Yeah.
So when you look at it from a fragmented side to all different databases out there, someone's registered in this area, then they're never going to do it. So it's never going to, like you said, have that synergy between the collaboration of the network.
Yeah.
So as soon as you said that, I thought, I can see where this is going and why it is the way it is. What made you? So you came out of the Fine and Country lot, and it went off. It sailed a ship away from being a traditionally family-run business, and obviously, even the years before that, it got to that size that it was even in that direction. What made you sit there one day and go, right, I believe that I'm going to do this now? What was the turning point for you?
There wasn't a turning point per se, but I
what was the itch?
Knew and know what a difference it makes.
Yeah.
And I mean that in the collective sense. So I mean that as a just to start selfishly, that I know that business is a great business to be in, but I know that for the agents, it is a wonderful business to be in. It really does change. It can change their business. It can change their lives, and just to really pin the tail on the donkey. So I do a lot of market research for agents that we're talking to, an existing network of agents and so on, measuring the market, measure the premium market, what it's worth, and who's doing what in that market, and looking at the competitors and looking through their weaknesses as well, using a lot of 20 EA data. And it's really rare where I look at a marketplace, take any marketplace across the UK, length and breadth. I'm not talking about any particularly upmarket areas, generally speaking. And having a 10% market share of that premium market is worth easily £200,000 in exchange commission to an agency per year. It's a huge amount of money. And that 10%, you might go, oh, that's quite a lot. But I'm only talking about that premium market. And that premium market starts at 500,000 or 750 or $1 million, depending on where you are in the country. If you're really in prime central London, it can go crazy. But I'm talking normal markets, if you like, that's what it's worth. And coming back to something that you just said, actually made me think about landlords and so on. But having a foothold in that premium market is great for those reasons I just said. Massive bottom line increase. Costs are relatively low because you don't need as many staff members and rent, rate, light, heat, power, offices, overheads, all that sort of stuff. You don't need any of that. But also it has this kind of exponential effect for your core brand business. So I just say you were Brady's Estate Agents and you had By Design, that was your premium division of your business. It's quite often that you think, okay, I'm going to hunt for landlords for my Brady's estate agent business. You go, okay, well, they're more likely, just this is generally speaking, but it's more likely they're going to be by design customers. So you have that conversation with them, which is more of a B2B conversation than it is with a residential vendor. Have a conversation with them. There could be landlords, there is lettings opportunities, there's a sale of investment properties there for them as well. You get aspirational buyers coming from Brady's up to your by design business as well. There's so much chain building and interplay between those two brands that goes on, which is, again, it's sort of one of those things you think, okay, this would be a nice thing to do. And then you wouldn't expect to have all of that additional business come through because you've got a foothold in both markets.
Would you say, like, going back to one of the points I made around when I sat down with some clients, because basically usually the conversation goes, I've got this brand and I've got the high-end brand, can I shoehorn it in? I'm like, no, because they're going to receive random bits of content from your core brand to those people. And it's just going to, it doesn't make the sense. So say someone came to you and said, like, I've got a traditional agency, core brand, and I want to go down this high-end market. Like, what are the fundamentals? And let's be honest, what are the fundamentals do they need to do? Like, going back to what I said about, I'm just going to take it and then I'm going to Joe in the office and she's still going to answer the phone. Like, is there anything that you would say back to those people that if you are going to go down the route of having like maybe a by design license or going down that higher market, what do you really need to have set up in place or structures in place?
Can I answer that with what not to do?
Basically, what not to do. Like, and it'd be a good one because, like I said to you, I see people going to go in a higher market, and I go, okay, how you done? Well, I've got a logo, and I'm like, and what else? And they're like, well, I'm just gonna get some boards done and just put it on my socials, and it's like, okay, well, there's no other strategy to that.
So like I've been in a really fortunate position. I've spoken to so many really good agents over so many years. I've picked up lots of information and strategies for them that work, and I've seen also the things that don't work. And sometimes it's easier to make it make sense when you talk about what doesn't work. So really, there's like three big pitfalls that agents fall into when it comes to how to not make it work in the premium market. And when I say that, like, it's just you end up wasting a bit of money and wasting time. So the first one is that you need a differentiated proposition. What you can't do is exactly what you said there, like slap a different logo on it and offer the same thing. Oh, it's a Rightmove featured property or something like that. Doesn't quite cut it. These homeowners want to feel special and specialized, and they want to feel a personal service that's for them. But that's on the small scale. On the large scale, they want to feel like their home is of national importance, and they want a national strategy behind promoting their brand that isn't just slinging it on Rightmove, but actually is a careful, bespoke launch strategy for them, but then is also something which is clearly a differentiated proposition from their estate agency business. So, we do things like we advertise in the Times, we advertise international in Wall Street Journal and Mansion Global, and we do think that a massive PR effort in getting coverage in major publications like the Daily Mail and the Times, that sort of stuff. I won't go into it too far because it ends up being a sales spiel, but it's got to be a differentiated proposition. It can't just be a professional photos. Come on, and a premium box on Rightmove. The second thing is the mistake they often make is about the brand. So I'll just use your fictional agency I've made up here, Brady's. So they go, okay, well, now it's Brady's Prestige. And like...
Prestige Worldwide.
I actually know that reference, I won't go off on one if we're not careful. So like the problem with that is you're selling the same chocolate bar in a different wrapper and everyone sees through it. Like I've genuinely never seen that work. And it's the first thing that comes to agents' heads. And I understand why, but I would say just don't bother. If you're thinking about that, kind of don't bother like with any of it. It almost ends up being the worst of all worlds, and it confuses your brand. But then also vendors are like, oh, this is the same thing I'm getting with Brady's, but you want me to pay 0.5% more, and then it comes back to the proposition like, for what exactly am I getting different? So you've got to have something which is a different proposition and then is clearly differentiated from a naming point of view, even the look and feel and the context of a premium brand. So that'd be that's another thing to take into consideration, is how you present it to the marketplace. And then the third thing is the service that comes with it, which is maybe the most controversial point. But I think what you would tell me, but I think what happens more often than not in volume or residential market is where you have a valuer, goes out, lists property, takes it on, hands it back to the team of sales negotiators, and then he's on to the next one, or she's on to the next one, or whatever. That's quite a hard thing to make work in the premium market. What vendors want is they want one person, a
100%,
cradle
yeah.
to grave service from start to finish and handheld all the way through a really personal service. And by design, we're not really a self-employed agency model. We get confused for that, I think, because there's so many of them out there. We're not. However, having said that, there was some really interesting data that came out from 20EA that I saw at the Negotiator conference a few weeks ago. And it was talking about the rise of self-employed estate agency. And so since 2019, there's been a 500% increase in the market share of self-employed agents. But what was interesting for me with my by design hat on was they looked at the average prices of, they took all of the self-employed estate agents as one, just call them one company for now, and then compared it to the top 10 other brands of estate agents across the country. And their average price was noticeably higher than the others. And I think that's because, maybe two things. One is because it lends itself to that personal service. And secondly, maybe if you are an self-employed agent, that it's quite hard to make it work in any other market than looking at premium offering, because you have to then turn to volume. And if you're a one-man army, it's a little difficult to do that, I suppose. So a long answer to a short question, but those are three things I wouldn't do.
But they are good points, because I think when you look at the you talk about, I know you said by design is not self-employed, but you look at the self-employed model, you have to treat it as a one-on-one service, purely because it goes back to, it's not the fee, it's not the house, it's the individual that lives in that house and the expectations. And who are they? So if they're in £1 million house and they're at a particular job and they're doing this and doing that, you know what I mean, and their lifestyle is this, like, how do you match that lifestyle to be the agent that goes on, does everything for them without them having to worry about it? But if you try and then portray that, and then they pull them back into the core brand, and that person's going, oh, do you know, like, can you do the viewing on Saturday?
Yeah.
Like, that lets them down, because they're thinking, like, no, because I'm worth like £500 an hour. So no, like, what am I paying you for? So you have to look at it as in like what you're solving within that.
Yeah.
And those are three good value points, because biggest thing is like the communication strategy you have with the external market. And if it's confusing, like what message goes out. And what I found really interesting in the last few years, I've been speaking to a lot of people, is there's a rise of the self-employed model, but also there's a grey area in the middle, which is the traditional model trying to be a self-employed model and trying to shoehorn it all in. And there's a confusion, because anyone could say, oh, we now do self-employed people, and it's just like you've just got a lot of random people just dotted around the country with no real systems, no real processes, and just access to the CRM, and they can post on your Rightmove account. Yeah. But it's like you go into dangerous ways of working, because all of a sudden, like you said at the beginning, halfway through this podcast, you're talking about how much does that tarnish your existing brand if you get some randomer who's working for your high end. So what I've started to see is you have, which Mark predicted a few years ago, you're going to have a rise of new businesses starting to set up. But like with your one, you've got a clear strategy. Like, we're not a self-employed model, we're not a traditional estate agency. Like, we've got our own set ways of working and how we're doing stuff, and it's a new evolution. But then there's people trying to maybe compete with you, going, right, I want to do like high-end stuff like by design, and I'm just gonna make, like Brady exclusive, try and use existing CRM, try and shoehorn it in, but then it just confuses the market. And they wonder why, like, maybe a couple of years down the line, that model fails, and they screw up their even existing current model.
This is exactly
because of it.
Yeah, no, it's a really, really good point you make. And two things is that one is that the stronger you are as a residential estate agency, the harder it becomes to make your brand work in the premium market, and which is a compliment and a problem at the same time. And I use Matt Giggs as the example of that. He's market leader with Giggs & Co in St Neots, town where he's from. But that brand is so well associated with £300,000-500,000 houses that the premium market is like, well, no, that's clearly not for me. I need to use a different agency. And if he was going to try and stretch his brand to get there, it would damage or alienate his current market that he's got so strongly with Giggs & Co. And there's, for a load of different reasons and getting into it, but even just very, very financially, numerically hard numbers, it doesn't make any sense to try and do all of that yourself. That's why By Design exists, to say, okay, well, we can give you everything that you need as an agency, all the marketing, branding, technology, and training to succeed in that premium market. Just make life easy for yourself and have a conversation with us. Even if it doesn't go anywhere, we can do the research on your territory, if you like, which shows you who's taking that market off of you. Agents are surprised, like the amount of agents that I talk to have no, really good agents who really don't know the value of the premium market in their area. And I show them and they almost fall off their seat going, oh my God. And the worst thing is, who's taking that? Those guys are taking that much market at those values and those fees. It's just astonishing. And they go, it sort of lights the fire a little bit, going, no, I'm not having that.
Well, I was in a meeting the other day and we looked at some analytics, and this is what is really good actually, because you analyse the data. I think there was like some statistic talking around, and they were reviewing completion rates, like what come to market and what were completed. And what was really interesting, which threw me, was like Purple Bricks actually.
Oh, go on.
And they were saying that they had this market share, but actually the data was something stupid, like 75% of the properties that went under offer actually completed.
Why do you think that is?
But I don't know, because you think the common perception is like they don't actually go through and because their service is there, but actually the data didn't lie on actually completed numbers. But it didn't obviously give the metrics on the types of houses they were and the areas, etc. But but that was quite surprising, that the assumption to not actually the data, and this is the difference. I've got an opinion on it. And like you said at the beginning, when I set up By Design, because I knew the fundamental data, I was confident in the data, I knew it was going to work. I knew we were going to go down this route. Whereas most people would not look at the data, look at from the very, very outside layer, like I'm going to charge this fee and I've got my board design and I don't really know where I'm going to sit, my tone of voice, the types of people, etc. And then they go to the market without no data and just go with emotion and wonder why it fails.
Yeah. So, and I think that actually taking that step further, we did a workshop. You did a workshop for By Design a few weeks ago, and obviously all about how to maximize life cycle. And what was really interesting I actually think Mark was talking about it when he was there as well, but about how using the content that is produced by Design and goes out through life cycle, then we can track what people are looking at, what content they're reading, and so on. And Mark gave the example of someone who was there with I think it was a £1.75 million house, who was reading, bit of an avid reader, and they just read a bit of content that was something like ready to take the plunge in the new year. Well, this is somebody that we should be talking to now. And Mark and I had that conversation before the workshop. And by the time of the workshop, he was booked in for the valuation. And that's coming back to using data. Like, we need to be smarter. And I think there's this sort of misconception, that personal service thing can get, it is important, but if you can combine that personal service with actual technology that works for you and tells you who to have the conversations with, that's where the magic lies. It's not a numbers game. It is as cliched as it is, quality over quantity. But if you can have those quality conversations with the vendors that have prices in those regions, then that's gold dust. It's absolute gold dust.
I always use the analogy of like if you're teeing off and the caddy's the technology. So the caddy's like, right, ball's on here. This is a club. Like, the wind's coming this bit here, I recommend, etc., etc. But your job as the agent is to step up on that tee and hit it down there and actually get it in the hole eventually. But it's a collaboration of the caddy working side by side with you to do it efficiently, rather than just standing there going, I don't know which club to use. And so there is a partnership between the two. And like you said, then it's more like using technology to find the opportunities to be able to not only work smarter, but also work with the right type of clients and reach them at that moment in time. And if you've not got a collaboration overall, like you said, like that data didn't come in, registered to that person, they didn't see that, they didn't see the content, it didn't show up as an opportunity, you'd just be blind to all of it, because that would be just going outside of all of it. And it could go on with, I'm getting really frustrated why that other agent down the road keeps on getting it because we didn't make those opportunities. So sort of wrapping up towards the end of it, I would say you mentioned Matt Giggs and obviously your partnership with Mark, obviously under Lifecycle. What made you partner with Matt?
I don't really have a good answer for that. It's a weird one, but so
how did that?
This is weird. Probably a good thing to end on. So I'd never met Matt before. I'd never met him apart from one event where I just tell you the story really quickly. So there's industry event that was put on by Sanjay Gandhi.
Yeah.
Called Sanjfest, of course.
Yeah.
And I remember it was a few years ago now, I can't remember when it was, and he had a Sanjfest on like the Thursday or something. And he called me because Sanjay used to be a customer of mine, and he's a really great guy. And he called me and he had a problem because he had Tom Panos, I think, coming over, and he had a mastermind session and his room had fallen through, and he asked if we could use the room, so sort him out with the room. And didn't think anything of it. I was up north on meetings, and then came back. I was in London for Sanjfest the following day. And Sanjay comes up to me and goes, come with me. I was like, okay, fine. What? And he had all the tables laid out for Sanjfest. And he's like, oh, you're in the VIP section. I was like, no, Sanjay, I'm a lurker at the back, mate. I'm not, don't put me in the VIP section. No, you helped me out yesterday. I was like, please, Sanjay, I want to sit at the back. He goes, no. I was like, fine. Okay, so sat at the front. And then it was a really great day, all these different speakers on.
I think I was
Mark.
there. I think I was there with Mark, yeah.
Well, you'd know the one because at one point, certain gigs got on the table.
Yeah, and shouting it.
That was my table.
Oh, because that was at the front. Yeah, I was at the table. Yeah.
Yeah, so I was at the front. So I'm sat there on this table, and for some reason, I don't know. I think it was just after lunch or something. And I remember being like, if not the only one, there's maybe one other person on the table. Matt stood in front of me on the table, so I'm looking at his shoes, and he's going off on one, and I'm kind of trying to keep my head down. I was like, oh, don't ask me a question. I don't want the audience participation going on here. And I was like, wow, that was an interesting afternoon. But then, anyway, I didn't speak to him at that point and went our separate ways. And Mark and I were talking, kind of strategizing about BioDesign before it launched. And I said, like, Mark and I had two different, on a really basic level, there's much more to it than this, but Mark's got the tech experience and I understand how beneficial a license model is for running a premium brand and kind of how to do it and the mechanics and the operations of it. So the thing that's missing, I think, from this is a training, coaching, mentoring perspective on how to excel at that. And I know that Matt does that.
Yeah.
Funny enough, at the same time, this is weird, coincidental, stars aligning, I don't know. But Mark said, well, that's weird because Matt didn't know any of this. He said, Matt had been texting Mark saying, oh, I really want to do something together. What should we do? Let's do something. Let's go into business together. And Mark's like, I can't really think of it. And then I'd said about this, and I think we should speak to Matt. And Mark's like, this is really strange. And they said, I remember Mark texted me and said, I've got a meeting with Matt. Should I mention this to him? I was like, yeah, let's mention him, see if he's interested. And then Mark texted me, he's like, yeah, Matt would absolutely love this and we'd absolutely love Matt. And it kind of came together. And I live really close to Matt. Like I'm one town away, but we'd never met until that point. I just had this feeling that he was the right person to speak to for this. Mark felt the same way as well. A few conversations and it just fit.
But I think sometimes if you understand what the values of what your brand is going to represent, then you can understand the people who fit into that. You know, you could go, I'm going to go friends with, you might have had someone you know for 5-10 years, go into partnership with them and think, actually, this person's a tosser.
Yeah.
I've made a massive mistake. Whereas initially, if what you've identified is actually the missing piece in your model and then found the person to sort it.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because I had assumed that because of you being around the industry for a while and Matt, like I remember meeting Matt at the Estas years and years ago, and then like through different things or going to Iceberg, etc. Then obviously that relationship's formed. Yeah. But I thought you would have known Matt for years, and there would have been well, I tell you what, conversations or meeting at events and stuff like that.
Honestly, just that. It was honestly as weird as that, and I said I don't have a good answer for it. Two things that come out of it though. One is, I suppose, takeaways. Is one is the power of just call it for the sake of laziness, personal branding in video and so on. Is that they say it's not what you know, it's who you know, but also it's who knows you. And if you can put yourself out there on video regularly enough, then people feel as if they know you. You can kind of kickstart a relationship. I had this with Simon Gates, that we didn't know each other other than seeing each other on video. We met and we were like 100 yards down the road already. It was bizarre. The second thing is never underestimate the power of standing on a table and shouting, because apparently that works as well.
I remember going, when we had the Iceberg Summit the other week, I was going to those events and I was going up to people going, have we met in human form, or is it still virtual? No, I've never met you, Bob. I was like, because I was trying to hack my brains, because you just get that. I mean, we talk about the mirror exposure effect. It gives all the familiarity around videos and stuff like that. And it's an interesting. It does work, and like you said, like you could see people. You can get a sense of people on social media who are actually true to themselves and people who are pretending to be someone else. Everyone sees through that bullshit. So if you're out there doing that, then like you said, like you watch Matt, think, yep. actually there's some sort of synergy there.
Yeah.
I need that sort of person, etc. And from a scale of us, like we see it, from my coaching perspective, technology and humans blended together works so much well, because you have to have innovation, not on just technology, but innovation of the mind. And because that's where, you can't just run one or the other, because to innovate, like, I don't know, to move the dial of technology or move that dial of being a bit different, you have to have someone in the champion, the change of the mindset and questioning why you're doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a nice one on that part. So we have a question to everyone out there. What do you see the future of estate agency to be? Not just that it's going to be by design, but
no, I wouldn't say that. So
from actually saying it from a data perspective, you've probably got some insights. You're probably looking at thinking, oh, this is shifting some trends.
Yeah, I think in the real long term of it, where I think it will end up going is kind of splitting down the middle. And I think that, I'm not just saying this about the premium market necessarily, although I think it lends itself to that. I think you'll have half, whatever it ends up being, but a portion of the industry that then moves to being high fee, high service, high quality marketing, personal service, that real, the personal agent, I suppose, but charging accordingly for it, charging proper fees for it. And then you'll get the other part of the market, which goes in completely the opposite direction, which is low service, low fee, with an agent that is much more hands off and much more with a platform of technology where customers are much more, doing heavy lifting themselves as well. And I think that's probably the case just because that's where most other industries end up going. And I think that if there's ever going to be a victim in it, it'd be the agents that sort of neither one nor the other, neither fish nor fowl, whatever the expression is, that they're charged of average fees, doing a bit of an average service, and there's no reason for a vendor to instruct them over somebody else. I think Mark had an expression I remember in a training course we did once with him, he said, like, what's the point of your company existing? And it's, that's quite a soul-searching question, I suppose. But I guess the point to come out of it really is, why should a vendor instruct you and trust you with their home? And if you can't answer that, then that's where you might get stuck in the middle. So I think over a long enough horizon, who knows, maybe I'm right or wrong, I think it'll go in two different directions: high fee, high service, and low fee, low service. And I think that's part of the reason I'm on the journey that I'm on, is I would want to be in the part that is high service, high fees, and doing a good job for people at the right price points and delivering agents a lifestyle.
It's almost like empowering agents who are looking at that race to the bottom, saying, I don't want to be a part of all that crap. I'm fed up with what I'm doing now. And then understanding, like, empowering the belief, going, here's the data, here's what this could be done. If you're happy to remove the ego of going, we're the number one selling agent in the area and all that sort of side to it.
This is so right.
And like that, if you remove that part to it, then the next layer is, okay, like, how much empower myself to be like, know your worth.
Yeah. This is exactly it. And ego plays a big part in it. You're absolutely right. I said we had a podcast there a few days ago, and one of our guests on there was James Kendall, and he's a really good agent.
Great agent.
And he really summed it up, because he's focused on moving up market and is moving up market. And he said, I just decided to get out of the rat race.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's the way he sees it, or rat run, or whatever he said. But that's exactly the way he felt.
Well, last point on it, I was on another podcast I've got, Project Peak Performance. We interviewed a guy who talked about, he did just driveways, doing driveways. And he basically said, when I set up the business, he had no experience in driveways.
Right.
But I set up the business in being a premium marketing for that. So how I looked, how I felt, marketing, what we did, how we acted, from down to, like, I think it was like the Edinburgh Driveway Company. So we made sure we looked like a prestige name.
Yeah.
And we said we were charging 3 times the amount of that. So he now teaches, he's a Forbes writer for tradespeople. He teaches people, trades, how to better themselves. But what was really interesting in what he was saying about the market, he's saying, like, you can increase your fees. Like he says to tradespeople, going, like, when he joins, he says, right, increase your price by 25% today. And they're like, no, can't do that. Not beyond it. And he said, like, no, do it. And he said, the skills, they do that. And they go, right, how did you get on with that? 4 weeks later. Yeah, brilliant. No one changed it. Okay, we're going to increase it by another 25%. Yeah. And he said, it's amazing, the belief of what you think is the market will pay you to what it doesn't pay you is two separate things. And Ian made quite a good point, and he mentioned about him just flying first class on Virgin to America, to Vegas. And he said, if you look at that from a service perspective, like you just said then, are you going to be the economy or are you going to be the first class? Like, are you going to be the economy where you put your own bags in, people are going to be putting their own bags in, weighing it all, everyone's in the same security, everyone gets the cheap food, everyone gets that? Or like, are you going to want to deliver a first class service where, you know, you're checked in, you're taken to a private gate, you're taken to private security, you don't get the same food as that? And that's the two separate elements, I think, what...
100%. This is exactly it. And that analogy is a perfect analogy. I kind of don't use it anymore because I almost got tired of talking about it myself and it became a bit cliched. But the way to view this from an estate agency perspective, right, is take Ian on the plane. So that plane is still going the same altitude, still at 38,000 feet, going the same distance, at the same speed, the same altitude, with the same air in the cabin. You know, a lot of it is the same.
Same turbulence.
Same turbulence, yeah. But as the customer, they come onto the Brady's airline plane and they turn left into By Design and they're paying 10 times what they would pay in economy for that premium service. That's where the margin is.
Yeah. And it's understanding what those margins are and what that experience is, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. But you would be a little bit asked, we're allowed to swear, oh, you have explicit content. You'd be a bit asked if you did pay 10 times the amount and you paid for first class and you got an economy service, wouldn't you?
And on that last point, I remember being on a flight where I was on like premium economy thinking this is quite nice. And it was like a flight to Thailand, back to Thailand. And there was some guy who had paid for first class and was pulled into the premium economy academy.
Yeah.
And his disgust in where he was there in that environment puts the analogy back in when someone signs up to you and they think you're getting a premium service and then they call you up and they're thinking it's the same service. Don't be that sort of agent. I'll leave it there, yeah?
Leave it there.
Thanks for coming on, David.
Thanks for having me, mate. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed. And then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.